we got our two fabulous, amazing artists here, sitting on the in their nice chairs, like good boys. Let's hear it from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that.
I'm not told I'm a good boy in enough interviews. That's really what I'm getting to. And I want the interviewer to call me a good boy.
I'm glad.
Lift it up.
All right. I think we should just like jump straight into it.
Okay.
We've been like binging Rolfes content for the past like few hours right now, getting ready for this.
Wow. Are you okay?
We're a little
feeling
fucked
okay?
up, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
We're perfectly fucked up for this actually.
Tabs.
Yeah. So you saw my long ass scatterbrained email about this. By the way, I'm gonna say we've begun recording and all that. But yeah, I sent this email, and for context, I'm asking about all of these big questions in life because I just graduated art college, and I'm deciding on where to go in life and stuff like that. And I'm studying interactive arts. I've kind of referenced your guys' work in my stuff when making the works and like pitching it to my professors, and they're being like, I don't understand, but keep going. So
Familiar with the dynamic?
Yeah. So I guess the first question is like, I just saw an interview with you talking about like community and this like wonderful like the Sonic Arts talk where you're talking about
sure.
yeah, just every like fossil you've left on the internet I'm just looking at, but where you were talking about community and making community as artists and stuff, and I appreciated how like you weren't afraid to go like pretty political and ethical with it in some cases. So I just want to open the floor with that. Let me say a more direct question.
If you want to, we can free associate here. That's usually how, like, when Andy and I do like lectures or talks or stuff, it's structured, but then we just kind of follow the tangent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start off with something easy to like jumpstart it. Like,
yeah.
I guess put yourself in your guys' noggins about like when you like first graduated or like you're going into the world as artists. Like, what was the initial how did you guys find community eventually? Like, what was the thought process in doing so?
I love how depressingly stated it. Of like, how do you find
people?
No, it's true. I mean, so for me at least, I graduated and I went to School of Art Institute of Chicago for a couple years. And that is one of the more conceptual, like bourgeois arts institutions or whatever. And with that, there is an assumption or like not even that unspoken, a kind of a promise that once you graduate, like, you know, then you're on to gallery stardom, or at least that there's any sort of support network after that. Which was absolutely not the case. And I've heard from students since who more or less say that's still the situation. They more or less teach you how to stay within academia, and that's basically it. Like, okay, go get MFA, go do whatever.
Come teach here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, for me, it was Chicago is weird in its own way. For example, when I graduated, the glitch art scene was really popping off, and like that's where the worldwide there was like glitch was happening, data moshing, circuit bending stuff. But Chicago was really an epicenter of a lot of that stuff. But none of those people actually hung out in person. Like, they were all in Chicago, but not seeing each other in person.
Okay.
So largely, and I think to a large extent, it's kind of continued this way for me and Andy. It's expanded quite a bit since then, but music scenes primarily was for me, like going to shows, getting it, like playing them or helping out in some sort of capacity, and then like ending up doing the flyers, and then doing a music video, doing like, and that kind of thing. You know, for better or worse, the music industry is more of a consistently self-funded, or not self-funded, but like it's an actual like industry. And then for a lot of art stuff, you know, this is all in flux, but there's less of that, and it's a little bit more scattered, and it's more built into this like permalant structure. So anyway, it's music communities have been largely the entry point for myself. Andy, you had slightly different path.
Yeah, because I when I left school, I did not. I mean, I left University of North Texas. Did not really have that much of community, especially because I came out of my painting degrees, like not really connected that much with my like fellow artists, like friends, like stay connected. I still have lifelong friends there, but like not really feeling like I wrung as much as I could out from that scene. Like, and I worked at a gallery, I had friends there, but just like was not satisfied, and so I ended up going to New York, where Sam was at, and I started working at a fashion company. Kind of sort of found a community there through work. That process went out, like I started doing full-time for Team Rolfes, and then had like a sort of community through like fellow directors and independent artists, just like kind of be in contact with. And then like over the pandemic, I got more into just like a Discord community of like fellow digital artists through a friend at the time, and like getting to know people there. And that was like a really nice and wholesome community. And then moving on from that, I kind of found myself nowadays kind of like in another community, which is ironically still also back to being adjacent to music. It's like the live code community here in New York, and like the creative technologists here. We have like shows and like places to go to like bind together in person, which has been great, especially after the pandemic and like everything splitting apart. Because like that was really hard, like kind of relying on Discord. Like you'd have connection there, but like wouldn't feel like that solid, and then you solidify once you're in person. And so like I kind of had felt like I've gone through a few communities, like bopping here and there, and now this current one, it's feeling really nice and solid, and like kind of having a nice growth space. So I'd say it's been a 7-year long process of like going through various communities and finding new paths and new truths in each one.
Yeah, I mean, like I should say, like within the music communities that I was part of, like I made a lot of good friends in that world, and Andy and I did in the fashion world and things like that. But a lot of times those were scene people. Like they're friends, but it's like they're not at my apartment. Like I see them at all the shows. We know each other pretty well. We catch up on stuff, but that's not the same level of community that I've run into recently, just out of kind of a happenstance. Like it came through being added to like kind of like edgelordy lefty meme group chat, and then that just was foisted upon me. Like friendship was foisted upon me. Here at Zero Space, we're making more concerted effort to actually like provide IRL places for people to like to an artist program for a community build, and like resources and stuff like that. But it always ends up needing to be, in my experience, needing to be grounded in the IRL, no matter how digitally mediated it is. But again, I don't know. It's not, there's no one size fits all strategy for finding community. It's kind of just like going out to stuff, like and then just like trying to fake being outgoing and just talking to people, like talking to as many people. And that's also incidentally how you network, how you get jobs, how you do all that stuff, is just being active and interested in a scene, and not an asshole, largely.
It's so hard not to be an asshole, though. Like
sometimes, I don't know. I mean, or if you're an asshole, like you have to make up for it by being charming or something. I don't know. Yeah. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a ratio you gotta hit.
Don't be an actively like harmful person, I guess. No, like there are plenty. I mean, my friend group, the aforementioned friend group are all sincere assholes, but they love each other, so it kind of works out.
Mm-hmm. The love is very insular as well.
Yeah, it ends up being a problem when you try and plug that into other friend groups who are not so poisonous. But
the crisscross crossover episodes don't work out so great.
No, not really. But anyway, yeah. So it's a trial and error process, but very much just like going to stuff, being present. And that's it's been consistent for me throughout the whole career.
I'm personally ready to go like head first into it. I don't necessarily have fear going into it personally, but I'm doing all my research to. I'm deciding between moving to like Chicago or New York. I want to.
I had that question.
Yeah. It's there's like a lot of pros and cons, and I can go into it very specifically, but I'm trying to like approach this interview in a way that like, you know, a lot of other people can get something out of it, and it's not just me jerking off here. So,
my experience was I love Chicago. I went to school there. I went back and lived there after I moved to Austin after graduating SAIC, and then I moved back to work with my painting mentor there. And the music scenes were some of the most like crazy, just like DIY venues popping up and going away every like 2 months. Like it was very intense. It's very intense. And there's a certain sense of the spaces are bigger. You have more access to like large lofts and random shit. It's a little more chaotic and high energy. There's a constant sense of danger, for better or worse, the way that the city is segregated. Like it's a more intense and rougher city. It's more DIY. Like I don't know. It's grittier and it's more stressful, honestly.
Yeah. I do like that aspect. Coming from Baltimore.
That is very sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a double-edged sword, right? Like, because that's very energizing and it makes you feel like this is my place to mold it how I want. Like the city's big, but you can find pockets where you can really do something. The flip side is it is being in music and art scenes there felt like I was having to crawl over the bodies of everybody else in my scene to get the fuck out of the city. And that maintains to this day. Whenever I've got not recently, but up until like a couple years ago, I would come back and I would see friends from Chicago and they all be like, oh, how's New York? Like, it's like super cutthroat, chip on the shoulder, like there's this Chicago vibe that's really cutthroat, like more so, like in a weird way, more so than like LA and New York are absolutely cutthroat, but like New York is exhausting and expensive enough that I don't know, it feels different. It doesn't feel so violent necessarily. So anyway, it's more livable in Chicago. It's more, you might have a better time. You might have like a more pleasant time. It's much more affordable. It's a place that the culture is constantly coming out of, that like really sincerely like is creating so much of whatever the rest of the world copies, but then it doesn't support itself. Like some of the original house musicians who are incredibly talented don't really play that many shows, or certainly not well-paying shows in Chicago. They go get booked in Europe because they're just not and then in Chicago they book these shitty Euro house DJs and stuff. Like the city doesn't respect its own talent a lot of the time. Also, the larger issue is that it's a lack of media infrastructure. This is less the case now, but historically, at least 10 years ago, the sites, the blogs, Vice, Pitchfork, whatever, Art Forum, whatever you want, whatever, the things that were the arbiters of promotion. Like you have a new show, you have a new music video, you have a new whatever, you send it off to them, or they find it and they document it. That exists. That exists in New York and not in Chicago. Generally, to a large extent, partially because more people in media, and media is going away. Like that world is going away right now, to be replaced by just straight up algorithmic discovery. But that world, at least for the time being, is maintained in New York and LA. And I would be, for example, like he'd be hearing about some cafe in New York in Bushwick that's like it's like the finest coffee you could ever. It's like the coolest place you could ever go. And then I would end up meeting the person who wrote that. And I would see that it was like, oh, your apartment's here, like here, that cafe's across the block. Like you had a deadline. That you were just like, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because they say these things and then the best people, or quote unquote, the best people go to the city. But to a large extent, that is just the proximity to media, to proximity to industry. And Chicago has that in certain ways, but in a lot of ways it doesn't. And it certainly doesn't support, I don't know. Yeah, it feels more meaningful out here. So I don't know how many people need me to pitch New York. You really should not live here unless you really have a reason to live here, because it fucking sucks a lot of the time.
I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I already said it was like you're living in a shoebox and this and that. So.
And people live in Jersey and come in, or people live in whatever in Baltimore come in, or Philly. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. There's also something where like visiting New York when I was living in Chicago, and I was living between both cities for about a year. I would fly in, I would make all these business meetings happen. I'd be doing all this stuff. If you're in there for a few days, you can just force people to make time for you. When you live here, it's like, oh, let's do it next week. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's exactly my impression.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a balance of that. You really could like. I will always, to this day, have people being like, well, you don't really need to live in New York anymore, right? Like, you're a 3D guy. You can just email the art to the client.
Yeah.
And that is kind of true in some respects, but really for building a career, for building a community, for building anything, IRL still is essential. So whether or not you live like right here or you live 2-hour train ride away and just come in every couple weeks, like either one of those could work very reasonably, I think. And it maybe is the move as rents are going psycho right now. People are having their rents raised by like $1,300 like in the next month. Like, it's just absurd. And there's no legal protections, and it's not going to get any better because we have no political willpower to actually do anything out here. So not that Chicago does. Like,
but for the most part right now, it's like just a little, like the tiniest bit cheaper to do so, to kind of live in there. So that's another draw.
So low, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I just said sliding in. Right now, you have the ability to slide in while rent's still reasonable. Whereas New York, it's terrible.
So great.
Yeah.
As someone living in New York, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I've been in a spot that has been leaseless, and I've been paying $700 a month for like 6 years, but it sucks. We don't know the landlords. We have vermin. Like, I'm now trying to move into an actual apartment, like a proper place that's not. Like, our place is fine, but I just want to leave. So there are you can find things like that. You just have to really work at it, and you kind of have to know somebody who lives in the area, who like knows somebody who's a broker. You can't use Straight Easy. You can't use the apps because then you're going to be waiting in line with 50 other people for a 1-bedroom apartment that costs like $3,000.
Yeah, I really lucked out by like my spot. Like, I pay $1,100. My roommate pays $1,400 or something, and like we're off in Ridgewood, like on the border of Ridgewood and Bushwick, and it's like that's pretty affordable. It's like it's a big place, and we got like a back roof,
big for New York
area, big for New York. Yeah, definitely small for Chicago or like anywhere reasonable. But yeah, like I lucked out because like it was a Craigslist post, and I got it in like back in November. I moved in November, like right before the insane craze happened.
Yeah.
Just,
but anyway,
and it continues.
Either city's great. Maybe try both. I don't know. Like, I had to really find my place, and I mean we very well could have been relocating outside of New York had we not started putting roots down at Zero Space. I mean, we'll see how things go out here, but this might keep us here for the next decade, literally. But yeah, so I don't know, staying at somebody's place for a few months, trying it, checking out, seeing what the vibe is. Not basing off of one weekend, because whenever you visit any city for one weekend, you're going to think it's sick because everybody's like showing
it's so lovely. I was there with my friends and we were just going out
like that all the time.
This is very helpful already for me, but I guess the next question would be like, how did you like put your roots into Zero Space or Team Rolfes or all of that once you guys decided, okay, let's make it happen in New York, I guess. So,
well, I mean, New York with all these.
That's a long process.
No, yeah, exactly, a long process. But I guess I want to hear the trouble.
Hear the tale.
Yeah, I mean, with all these things, it is like we started Team Rolfes 2016, Andy.
2017 right? April.
2017. We'd already been working on. We'd done a few music videos at that point. We'd already been working together on things. Andy was working for Nico Panda, like Nicola Formichetti or Ketty.
Formichetti.
Every time I get that wrong. Formichetti, who we worked with since with Gaga stuff and stuff like that. And Super Deluxe, which is, if nobody knows Super Deluxe is, it's kind of like a sister company, RIP. My God. It's like, can y'all hear that music? Tell me if you can start hearing the music. There's an event that's going to start here. I might have to join Andy. Anyway, Super Deluxe was like a sister company to Adult Swim, basically, and they did all this. It was like Adult Swim, but actually more online. They had this crazy live project that, like, all the Twitch interactive stuff that's happening now still pales in comparison to the stuff they were doing using Facebook chat on Facebook Live, like back in 2017. So anyway, that was an excuse. We were actually getting a relatively large budget for the first time, and I had been running everything through my personal bank account up until that point, just fucking up my taxes. And we realized, our friend Tim Senti said, form an LLC at the very least, just for your own tax burden. So that was the impetus for Team Rolfes. And then from there, I mean, the thing that got me to New York was, I was living in Chicago. I was flying to New York. You could get $100 flights pretty cheap. I was just randomly flying to New York every couple months, just trying to like meet people. This is back in like Facebook early, like and Instagram days, but not in the way it is now. No TikTok, nothing like that. And I added my director, like idol, Tim Senti, who's now a good friend to us. I had added all these people. And I just was like, I had posted some 3D stuff being like, hey, I'm coming to New York. Like, let me know if anybody's around. And he very kindly messaged me and was like, hey, yeah, we should hang out. And he showed me around and we started collaborating. And then through those collaborations, a friend sent me a competition to send some art in for a gallery show at Nico Panda back in the day. I get in the gallery competition was enough for me to spend my savings to fly out for that and just do a bunch of meetings. And I ended up meeting somebody who eventually, long story short, I kept visiting this one fashion company over and over and over and being like, here's my new stuff, check it out. And they're like, oh, this is very sick. We have nothing for you, but like, this is cool to see. Eventually they put me in contact. They were like, maybe just to get me off their back, put me in contact with this creative director at this studio for Dior and Louis Vuitton, who does their storefronts and vitrines. And they were like, we need a 3D modeler. All our people do Rhino. We need somebody to do organic forms. So I got a temporary gig for about 2 years doing storefront design, like sculpting for Dior and Vuitton. And that was enough of a budget to get to move with my now ex to a place in Bushwick and get set up there and get rid of my Chicago place. And then from there, I mean, Zero Space was us knowing, again, just being in the scene, knowing this guy Zoe, knowing a couple other people. It used to be an experiential venue, place you go and you see the crazy Connect Tract stuff, and there's like a Sleep No More kind of element. We did a few live stream test shows for Unsound and for Adult Swim there, and just kept up the dialogue. And we were in on the ground floor and all this. Like, we were aware that we were doing virtual production, so-called, quote unquote, before that was ever a thing. We've been doing that since 2016. Mm-hmm. Now it's a huge industry with big LED walls and VR and all this stuff. But it was because we've worked with that because it was artistically interesting to us, but also, we kept that in mind. I was positioning us to try and get some funding because we were doing this before there was ever really an industry for it. So anyway, as we see that industry growing and Zero Space themselves during the pandemic pivot to virtual production, we realized now's the perfect time for us to jump in on that. And they are uniquely supportive of artists in a way that most of these like weird corporate sponsorships or like partnership artist residency things almost universally suck. Like, we had one with VR World in Midtown. We had one with like all these things that like sound cool, but then they give you like a wrecked out office basement and like $2 and it's like 90 and no AC. And then they expect you to make like an hour of rendering, or else they start threatening lawsuits type stuff. Like a lot of these corporate things end up being, they suck. And this is
no AC and it's a heat wave.
Yeah.
Which was already funny. And that's not to say like, oh, if you follow these specific steps, you will find something like Zero Space. Zero Space is a moment in time, potentially, that I've never run into in the US before, because we have no state funding. I've run into kind of sort of similar opportunities that were not so commercially based in Europe, because they get state funding, so you can put on the big festivals and stuff. That's where we go perform overseas. But in the US, this is kind of a once in a many years thing. And that's partially just because we've been living in this intermediate space between fostering our art and then trying to plug that into existing industries and trends and waves and things, being aware of the general cultural dialogue and trying to have a conversation, like have a dialogue with that broader mainstream world, in order to be relevant, to be something that's not just completely esoteric, and with the hope that we can get some sort of funding for our studio. And that is kind of where things have been dovetailing, is seeing where things are going and seeing if you have a place for your own work to interact with that in some sort of capacity, and then just pitching 1 million people, telling 1 million people about it, having 500 people say like, yes, we're going to give you all the money. Oh, we're going to make you a superstar. Oh, I'm going to be your manager. I'm going to and like 99.9 of those things will fall away, and then 10 years will pass, and then something cool will come up, or something, you know, or like a cool thing will happen every couple of years. So that's been more or less the process.
Okay. That
that's not too abstract an answer.
No, that was pretty succinct. But seeing how vigilant you are with these dealings or contracts or whatever the case, I then my next question would be like, now that you're in the position to like pay other people, like how are you compensating? How did that process like evolve, I guess, and where is it now?
I mean, all this stuff's been step by step, trial and error.
Yeah.
Through building, starting with, you know, a one music video, and then it's just me, and then it's me and Andy, and then it's me and Andy, like, and realizing, I mean, this is more my issue, but I was very, and still I am very controlling about things. But to a certain extent, Andy and I are doing these projects, and then there's too much stuff. We want to do something, we can't handle everything, so we got to hire somebody. So, I mean, by our second video, we had like 5 people on staff, and yeah, it's been a process of just expanding the team, and then now we're paying out of pocket because we're finally doing our original projects and stuff. So,
Awesome.
I mean, I just put out. I mean, it's in the hopes that we get some outside investment, but like that, and knowing what people's rates are, knowing how to argue a contract, or like set up a contract, not necessarily argue one, but like what people deserve, what sucks, has just come through Andy and I experiencing it on the other end, being hired for stuff and being like, this sucks. This is how it should be done. Yeah, I mean, anything else, Andy? I mean, that's basically just been going step by step.
Yeah, like dealing with the wheeling and dealing with corporations and how we have gotten paid, recognizing how we don't want to pay people.
Paying on time, you know, or trying to.
Time.
Establishing the scope beforehand, stuff like that.
Yeah, and also budget. One big thing that was problem was like when we were starting out, it was like a lot of friend rates, and I say like, okay, now we actually need to learn people's rates, because like budgets went from $2,000 and we're breaking our backs to this music video to $15,000 to $50,000, $80,000, and it's just like, all right, now we can like hire people and like pay proper rates to where we are now, to like.
Then we hire more people though, and then that ends up being an issue.
That's what I'm mentioning. Like it's
the balance.
Speaking on budgets. It's being able to pay people's rates and being able to pay for a larger team to help manage things, especially working with our producer extensively. We've been blessed to work with Dina Chang, a former executive producer at Vice, among many, many, many other things.
Realizing we need a producer. So, how valuable a producer is. Oh yeah, I did not realize that until.
And so yeah, she's been amazingly helpful, especially just in terms of helping us, like just literally just like having in a sheet, like writing down like these are our line items. This is the amount of overhead you also have to have in mind, and this is what we're going to ask for, rather than just being like, oh yes, thank you for the amount that you're giving us. It's like, no, this is what the amount we need to actually complete this job.
Yeah.
And like we can negotiate, but like you will have to learn to not to live without some things, because that is otherwise not physically possible. Where in the past we would have tried to do that because we're just busting our asses to try to make something work, because we're trying to make our moves. Whereas now it's just like, okay, we are done killing ourselves and living an unhealthy life. Like, how do we have this healthy for everyone? Everyone part of the process, like mostly healthier life. Sam.
Yeah. Mine's gotten better. But we're able to more, through all those struggles, more confidently say no. Getting to a point, even if, I mean, a lot of it also was faking it till you make it. That's how all this thing was just like just acting like you know what you're doing, and doing your best and asking other people who are doing the thing, and then just having confidence to push through, and advocating for yourself throughout, not being trying to overly grovel at the ground, because there is no, it's hard to do a union of any sort with freelancers, because we're all individual monads negotiating against these big corporations. Like, our bargaining power is very, very minor, but at the very least, so it ends up being a race to the bottom. But recognizing what is going to be painful and ruin your life at least gives you the confidence to just be like, this isn't worth it. Like, get somebody else or something. And usually, I mean, we have not said straight up like no or I quit mid project. That's very, very infrequent. We always typically just end up trying to make it work. But like the few times where I've been like, this is unacceptable, I'm leaving, or you need to find somebody else, that it has reframed the relationship with the client drastically in my favor. And they were like, no, I'm sorry. Like, whereas before they were being an asshole, like it forces them to recognize you as a person who has a breaking point. And it shouldn't get to that point. And you can give them when you establish project scope, when you establish like, what are we agreeing to at the top? What does that cover? And especially, I mean, I would say probably the biggest thing you have to watch out for is scope creep, which whatever, even whether you have a contract or not, what you agree on is the scope. Yeah. Like it's a video and it's got 3 characters and then they do this thing. Mm-hmm. And then I
hope you have a contract.
It would help to have a contract. Yeah. But at the very least, establish that this is how much you're getting. This is when it's coming in. If they start extending past that, then the original deal doesn't apply. The terms and it's either you need more money, you have to renegotiate. These
revisions cost more, et cetera, et cetera.
All that kind of stuff. And just establishing that there is a scope and it doesn't expand forever. I have personally, I mean, it's almost always my fault when that happens and we end up getting scope creep, because it's just you get in the process. You're just like, yes, let's just do it. They're excited. They're like, oh, fine, fuck, okay. That you really have to put your foot down. Well, you establish it up front, and then you won't have to feel bad about putting your foot down because you've told them. And then they'll be like, a client sucks, so they'll be pissy or they'll give you shit about it or whatever. But you have it in writing, and then you just have to stick by your guns as not even just an artist, but just as a human with who has limits to stick to that original agreement, and that's legally enforceable too.
Yeah, it's knowing what you should be precious about, especially with like a client project. It's like, look, unless like the IP is 100% yours at the end, or they're paying. Actually, even if they're paying a lot of money, it doesn't even matter. Like unless it's like 100% your IP, then it's like gauging how precious you actually need to be, and like just knowing when to be like, okay, well this thing isn't working out. Like we need to make these cuts. Like this needs to happen, etc.
Yeah.
And like to say like. Because and also making just like a quick note, because like a lot of times, like we are steadfast with contracts with our clients. We're usually a lot more. I'm just revealing this hypocrisy that I have, because a lot of times with our contractors, we don't have contracts, but we do have it in writing, scope, rate, everything in emails. So that's very helpful to like for everyone to refer back to. It's like, okay, even if it's not like a formal signed document, it is. In email, it's
usable in court.
In a court of law. It's like, and even just like day to day, people can be like, oh, okay, so this is like the days I'm on, this is the rate, etc. It's like something like it just helps everyone with the process. So like having those clear communication lines, and like having that knowing what to aim for.
And I mean, hopping on a call with a client or with somebody to like figure shit out or like, go over stuff is usually, especially if there's issues, can really smooth things over. But whenever it gets into like nitty gritty, like rate, scope increase, stuff like that, they need to that can't be on the phone. That has to be emailed.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't know if this was, is this still within what y'all want to talk about? Because we keep talking about professional practices.
It works. I'm basically in the mindset of like, all right, they don't teach you this in art school, like at all. They don't even mention contracts from like my curriculum, which is like crazy to even think about, like entering like the workforce like this.
I'm so thankful. I had like one professor in a producing class who actually was like, guys, I went because they graduated from, because I'm at NYU, so they graduated from NYU. They're like, guys, I have all these documents that they never gave me. I'm going to give you guys in a large Google Doc, like literally
send me that Google Doc
I possibly can share with you guys.
Yeah, that's great.
You might possibly need in your life.
I'm lucky that I knew somebody off of Discord that actually was like in a state school doing graphic design, and their teacher was like, hey, this is how you do contracts. And then they gave them a template of their contract. And then they're like, okay, so kind of fill in your own name. I basically made it like fill in the blank. It's like an ad lib, do whatever.
It's a Mad Lib.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and then they started talking to me about that, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to this fucking art school, and they didn't even fucking mention this. So I'm slowly getting the hang of like, all right, you got to advocate for yourself. Like, well, yeah.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, coming out of a like a BFA art school thing, the BFA program broadly for better, like it varies, but like it's built for an industry that doesn't exist anymore. Like the existing white box gallery world is a fossil. It exists to prop up existing old money and just like justify itself. Like culture has moved on, the industry's moved on, but no money has come in, and we're still getting trained for this one process. And so they don't think to give us professional practices or whatever. So basically the way that Andy and I found our ways into where we're at now is recreating our art practice in these like commercial spaces. Doing it with musicians, doing it with fashion companies, because those were creative prompts that we could work with and have a fair amount of creative freedom. Typically, they don't have much money, but if you're willing to like live kind of a shitty lifestyle for a while, maybe it can build up, or at least it comes with a certain amount of clout. It comes with a certain amount of like it has a built-in promotional cycle. Crucially, like the music world again is a functional industry, even though it sucks shit. It is a existing functional industry. And as much as they don't want to credit visual artists as little as possible, there is at least it's built around a marketing cycle, an album release, a music video, whatever. And so there is a certain amount of fanfare that galleries sure as shit basically don't do, where they got to send out a postcard. Like, give me a break. I mean, but I think shit. Newsletter, like, and now granted, where that utility comes in is those, if you can get with a gallery, like they have built-in collector networks, and that's not a promotional thing. That's just them talking to their rich friends or whatever, their benefactors, which is one way to do things in another kind of path. But anyway, lacking a institutional art world. Again, this is a very American thing. There is more of a support for this in Europe and Australia, and I imagine Asia, but we're just familiar with Australia and Europe. Those have state funding, and so they can do big crazy biennials and whatever the fuck. That does not exist here for the most part. So unless you really know somebody, we've just learned by like immersion therapy or immersion learning by being in the commerce world, and you just have to sink or swim when it comes to that kind of shit. So that's one way. You don't have to do that. And now there's like, I don't know. Then we're getting into like, do you want to be a content person? Like, we've always been, we're doing client stuff. We're doing things that end up as content, but we're not streamers. We're not like, I'm not in TikTok. I'm not trying to monetize, do ads on TikTok or something like that. That's a whole other world that is always there and always like, tempting us with like, ooh, clout, like, oh, don't you want like
I will say the Zuck got me pregnant video though is a pretty incredible content. That's pretty
that should have millions.
And I mean, you're not the fifth person to tell me that. Like all those sketches from a couple years ago could fit into that to an extent, but I don't actually know. I mean, we don't need to get into just a conversation about TikTok, but like my interest in that stuff happened when in a world on Instagram where there was trends that you could still kind of subvert and you would still be participating in the trends. TikTok, at least in my experience, you're fully participating, more or less straight faced. If you're trying to subvert it, it's not going to catch the wave. And so I'm not really interested, even though like there's the promise of more views. So we're taking this other way around of doing stage shows, doing short films, kind of trying to win the game by not playing. We'll see how that works out. This is the first year of us doing fully original stuff, paying for our own stuff, like doing large scale stuff that we're putting all of our energy into.
It's exciting.
But it's incredibly exciting. It's incredibly scary. It's like, I'm the client now. I'm putting until we get investment, I'm putting my money into this project, and I don't have that much money, and like I'm using all of it, but I think it's worth it. And it's scary it sounds corny as shit, but like, it's scary to not put out a new like buzzy video every 3 weeks or like a skit every 2 weeks or whatever the fuck the algorithm requires. But I was just looking down the line, and Andy had been dissatisfied with the shit way before me. I was kidding myself, but I was looking and just being like, how many more? We're going to keep doing music videos, but how many more can we really do of this? Like, how many more? Do I just want to be making like funny 1-minute skits responding to the thing that happened 5 seconds ago before everybody kind of forgets about it for the rest of my life? Like, give me a break. So trying to hop off of that treadmill and shoot for the moon and see if it works out is where the moment we're in right now. It could crash and burn, but yeah, anyway, but that took 6 years of like playing the game to get to that point.
Yeah. I'm taking right now. I just wanted to say I'm taking like golf swings at like small little hits at trying to do my own part, because it's we're in art school, so we still have the capability to do that. But I mean, it's still like recently. I just want to add on to the idea of budget and not understanding budget until you actually try it. Because I recently shot a short film of mine that we budgeted originally. We're like, oh yeah, this is small scale, limited locations, like 3 locations. That's $3,000. You can probably do this. It ended up like ballooning up to like 5 to 6K about by the end of the project. And I'm in debt to a lot of people because I borrowed a lot of money from a lot of people. And now I'm just
Thank God not me.
Yeah. I did not borrow from Gabriel. Gabriel made a nice donation, a friendly donation, but
I mean, and that's a common story. I mean, that, we've also backed into all these like worlds and practices, like commercial space, music video space, production space, the film world. Like that whole thing is a pretty common story. Like, just going for it and spending a lot of money. I mean, that's hopefully this one we're doing will pan out, but it's pretty typical that like you do that and then it's like a huge monetary boondoggle, and it could be a really good thing, but it's like a huge mess. Exactly. So we've at least we've had this history to know I need to get a producer and we can structure a show this way, so I save a few headaches, but it's always trial and error. And I mean, I probably we would have started doing more original stuff other than these little sketches and stuff earlier, but because we're locked into this music video, like online treadmill, those only have enough money to keep us going for a month or 2 at a time maximum. So it's just like, if we want a little freedom to do our own thing, at least historically, the usual setup is a studio will do 80% pure commercial stuff, like do stuff for whatever BMW or like Fanta or whatever. So, and they're just doing ad stuff. Even music video directors, the vast majority of directors who do music videos do not make a living doing music videos. Yeah. The fact we made a living doing experimental animated music videos is psychotic in the first place. People don't do that. They do their ad stuff. They get the production. Literally, because there's no money there. And then they'll do their fun project like once or twice a year to get a little clout and like have some art time. We've only done like the experimental arty stuff that's like barely funded, and we've just kept the studio running doing that. Now, granted, it helped to be doing things in multiple worlds, like the music world, the fashion world, Super Deluxe. Like I was always positioning us and pitching us to a lot of different spheres that, not just cynically in terms of like this is the hot thing, but like this is what we're interested in and what our specific artistic practice would lend itself well to, like Super Deluxe doing real-time weird comedy 3D stuff. And even though most of those, even though we were supposed to have a huge official Twitch show, and then Amazon fired everybody, or we're supposed to have a big Super Deluxe thing, and then they destroyed Super Deluxe. Even though parent companies will continue, like you'll do 1 million pitches, 3 will get right there to selling, and then they get canceled by Bezos or somebody else. It has at least diversified the different art we're doing and made us more conversant in doing all sorts of things, and drill down to like what is the core of like Team Rolfes, not just like music videos, but what is our whole deal.
That kind of Which stuff. Is a silver lining of years of hardship. yeah. But on the note, like I've been talking to artist friends recently about this, about like, if you're fine with kind of taking a slow path for a bit, there's no shame at all in like just taking a day job, because like it's nice having safety nets. Mm-hmm. Like we're fortunate enough to have like a few safety nets around, like if shit really gets bad. And like there's like some people don't have the safety nets we have, and like it's perfectly fine to be like, okay, you just gotta work this 9 to 5 so you can build up savings if anything, and then once you. And then like do the weekend projects. Like people try to like, I don't know, people say one way or another thing, but I was like, it's fine. It's just, it'll slow you down, sure. that's just physics. You can't put as much time into what you're trying to build. But if you can have that patience to build that, work things. I mean, that's kind of like why I jumped ship at Nico Panda, because like I was working there, and then I like Team Rolfes stuff was starting to build up, and like there are also like other things at the company, but mainly it was just like Team Rolfes building up. It's like, okay, I'm spending weekdays and weeknights now because I've cut down my hours. I might as well just like jump ship now.
Enough consistent stuff coming in, which is, I mean, we've been, like, to your point, we've been very privileged to have consistent stuff pretty much without fail. When we're like out there trying to make it happen, like a project will come in every 2 to 3 weeks that we will like want to say yes to, and that will keep the thing going.
What was it like back when it was still like when you were just freelancing on your own, Sam, and you were just trying to like So when I moved back from Austin to Chicago, when I moved to Austin, I worked at an art store on the drag, and it was the worst time of my life. I was like, I would like get off work at like 7 p.m. and I would go to one of their 24-hour coffee shops and then work all night on like my own shit, trying to like put this art collective together and like figure out my art world and try and get a gallery show or whatever, and work until from 7, like get there like 8 p.m., work there until like 6 or 7 a.m., drive to the parking lot of the art store, sleep for an hour, and then go back into work. And I would did that enough times, and then I hit up that painting mentor, Wesley Kimler. Moved back to Chicago. It was like enough of an excuse. He was like, I don't have any money, but I can at least, we can do some shows and you can like meet some people. We can put some stuff on. So I moved up there and he introduced me to this very eccentric eyewear designer, eyewear storefront owner. And she was just eccentric enough to have a lot of ideas in terms of eyewear designs and ask me to do like 3D mock-ups and stuff. And I just started doing 3D. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, okay, yeah, we'll do a 3D print of this like eye patch thing you want to do. Or, okay, I'll design your whatever greeting cards or something. And so I got to transition from being a painter into more digital. I could just sit at a cafe charging a hourly rate, learning ZBrush basically. That kind of carried me through to, I was working there until I started visiting New York. Like I had enough of a consistent income that I could go fly out to New York and sleep on people's couches. And that's where I started working with Tim and having more of an actual portfolio. And then I'd already been doing flyers for music shows. I'd been doing album covers every once in a while, like small things, basically not paying, but building up a bit of a momentum, and specifically going to these music scenes, participating in the scenes, sometimes DJing, and having enough stuff pop up that people thought of me when they were looking for a certain thing. And then that kind of just kept building. And then the Dior thing came through again, me just like banging the door down at this fashion company and just continuing to do that. So like the freelancing was basically having this one weird eccentric client and then taking a bunch of other random things while I could and just like see how much I could get away with. And working at and I worked at a punk venue, just like running hot wings up 3 flights of stairs. So it was kind of just like doing, it was running hot wings at this punk venue on like near South Side, doing this eyewear thing, and then just trying to do as much like pitching to people and just trying to meet people in New York, and to the point that I could like get enough of a consistent income enough to feel comfortable moving out there. Was DJ Fuck a thing by this time?
No. I've been DJing since I was 15, but DJ Fuck was 2018. Whenever horrorcore, Dan did his first horrorcore show in New York, he booked DJ Ocean, which was Caroline, and a bunch of other people, and he hit me up and he's like, he knew I had grown up a turntablist. He's like, Sam, would you like to do a new metal turntablist set as DJ Fuck? I was like, Dan, I would fucking love to do that. Thank you. And it was like enough of like giving me the new metal thing.
So wait, was it his idea for you to be called DJ Fuck?
Yeah. It was given to me by Dan. Yeah. And so I am DJ Fuck is in the Danny Harle universe. It has not been pictured in any of the videos too visibly. There's like a hint here and there, but DJ Fuck is very much still in Dan's universe. And that was enough of like that was really crucial for me, because I was taking myself way too serious, because I was doing more sound and playing shows and throwing shows in Chicago than visual stuff really when I was in art school. I was doing my mixed media painting stuff, but I was really about making music and DJing and stuff. And that kind of fell away as I was trying to make the visual thing happen. But I was taking myself very seriously, and I was like, and everything I wanted to do was like this super high concept, big project thing, which I see a lot of early artists do. Is like, I want to do a metaverse, I want to do this, I want to do a 3D character that's plugged into a stream, and and you should just do one of those things, or take it, or do all of them, but don't take it very seriously and like make them all silly and shitty. Dan calling me DJ fuck was stupid enough that I could just play any show. Like I've been playing a lot of shows internationally and going around, but I'm not necessarily seeking it out. It just continues to be a fun thing, which was enough of a disconnect from like my artistic personality or whatever. So for a lot of people who might end up maybe like me getting tripped up and making these overly ornate things, sometimes giving yourself a stupid alias or something, or having some sort of disconnect from that can be very helpful. Oh, it looks like our call is going to end 10 minutes, but I can make a new one. I thought I can extend this. I've got a Google individual plan. Hold on. All right, I'm going to start my 14-day trial. They're making this very easy for me. All right, we can keep talking.
All right, perfect.
My card is somewhere.
Great.
Do you have anything to add to that, Andy?
Oh yeah.
We went all over the place, but I think the initial question was the first couple jobs, I guess, and like freelancing and stuff. I know you have a background of figurative painting.
Like how we got enough of like a momentum and then made it our own. Right?
Yeah, essentially.
Andy, what's your perspective on
that? Like on keeping Team Rolfes afloat.
Yeah, like near the beginning part of Team Rolf, when you first started getting involved, maybe.
Yeah, because like I've been working on and off with Sam while I was still at Nico Panda. Like we would have projects and like shoot things like in the space there, which they allow. Like they would be like, "Yeah, you should work out here." I was like, "Okay, yeah."
They're very supportive.
Yeah, they're very supportive. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the early days. Yeah, 2018 when I jumped ship. I think we.
Well, I mean, when you graduated. You were doing photography for weddings and stuff.
Well, if I want to back up, like when I graduated, I was still like a semi-pro photographer and like in like fashion scenes. Like I worked pro bono at a gallery in Dallas, South Dallas, or Deep Ellum. It's not South Dallas. And then like the Arts District, and like I got everything I could get out of there. I was like, all right, jump ship, and so I go to New York without a job and just like a savings that quickly evaporated. But fortunately, I had an old patron who has a fashion website. You know, like I'd done a couple of events for her in Dallas. And she was like, "Oh yeah, if you're in New York, we could shoot Fashion Week." And so, my first actual job in New York, because I shoot Women's Fashion Week 2015, is about 20 shows in 3 days, front of house and behind the scenes, with a team of a few others. So that was insane.
Awesome.
That was fun.
Fucking awesome.
And then I think that kind of ties me over because, like, I think a month later, I see someone from Two Hustlers that had set up the gallery.
Part of Nico Panda.
Part of Nico Panda that had like organized the gallery thing at Nico Panda. They were looking for 3D artists and other stuff, just like experimental stuff. And so I DM'd them, and Zach is like, "Oh yeah, perfect. You're perfect." And so that's an unpaid internship for 3 months. They do pay me because I do like my first job there is I make 3 VR experiences for their holiday party. I spent like a couple months making that for the Oculus, because the Google Cardboards had just come out. And so I collaborate with Sam for one. Another one was like a Nico Panda themed one, like very idyllic. Like basically the whole idea was like, you can pop these bubbles that are falling down from the sky in the shape of, there's just like a panda themed landscape that was like very cartoony, but like as orchestral music plays. I think it was like Saturn or Jupiter, one of the songs of, like about the planets. that was in public domain.
Yeah.
Well, for context, like Nico Pan was really weirdly supportive of like kind of techie art stuff that we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
Partially just because they were interested in it for like promotion and stuff. But like seeing Andy's Google Cardboards for this holiday party, like all these like very fancy, like Instagram clouded like fashion people up in this loft in Soho, putting on like these big chunky Google Cardboards. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like that much like Zero Space does not come around a lot. So it was like being aware of like zeroing in on people who like actually seem kind of cool and interested in what you're doing that you can fit into, and then trying to fit into their world as best you can.
Yeah, which is a weird world. I mean, I was burnt out and I left the party early because I was so severely just burnt out, like I couldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was
our trajectory with fashion broadly.
Basically,
burn down, leaving the party.
Yeah, but then I continued with them for the next 2.5 years. Thankfully paid. They brought me on. Went from 2 hustlers, and I kind of closed down. I was like pretty much like their last freelancer or whatever. I think I continually got paid through 2 hustlers doing work for Nico Panda for whatever reason. But I basically I did like a bunch of website, but did fashion designs, did marketing, redid their website, more marketing, social media. I've retouched like several campaigns. I actually personally shot like the accessories for at least one or 2 campaigns.
Oh.
Yeah, they were getting their money's worth.
Yeah, milking you dry.
Yeah, and so like during that process was making connections and having friends and people who'd come in and out, and like getting to know New York more. Mm-hmm. And then by the time Jump Ship had like built up enough connections and savings after all that to be like, okay, this is now the time where I can kind of like we can like just kind of focus fully on Team Rolfes to kind of keep the momentum going.
I'm curious. Sorry. No, I just wanted to ask a more personal question of like, since you guys do so much work with VR, what was your first experience with VR? Do you guys even remember like your first experience of putting that on?
Oh, I do actually.
Yeah.
I can't remember the artist's name, but it was one of the first times visiting New York. Might have been my first time visiting New York. I think it was New Museum had this installation by an artist, had the headset hanging down, and it was like a point cloud. You're like in the forest, and you're in a point cloud forest.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was nice. That was basically all it was, but it was
like,
it was
this is not nearly cool enough for
it was
not going to take off.
Cool. I mean, for our stuff, I mean, I've got the headset right next to me, but like, and I'm about to use it. I have to record this thing, but only out of necessity. We don't. Andy has more recently because he actually had a playable VR thing installed at Zero Space, but a lot of times we're just using the controllers. We're not even using the headsets that much. So it's more the physicality. It's more the spatial tracking, that kind of thing that we're interested in more so than like the put a headset on and be in a different world kind of thing, which is cool. But yeah.
So my first experience was like pretty much just with the Google Cardboard, doing web VR, doing the Android VR. And then during that process, I had enough money to where I bought us a Vive and like started playing around with Tilt Brush and playing around with the Steam archery game, which I've had many hours on.
I recently played that.
Yeah, I did.
Did you buy our Vive?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was like, oh yeah, this could be a good investment. Like let's get this.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
I only remember that like a few days ago. I was like, oh yeah.
We didn't buy it for. I mean, usually most of our equipment we get for a project. Like you need a project and you work it into the budget or something like that. I assumed it was something like that where we had a major project and we just used it to buy No,
we didn't do that yet. No.
Wow. We didn't know how to do that.
So
interesting.
So we got a Vive and like that. I mean, Tilt Brush. Like I had just started getting back into 3D because we originally touched on it like when we were teenagers, and then it was like, oh, this is boring. And then came back into
ZBrush wasn't around then.
Yeah, came back and ZBrush did exist at that point, and like played around with Tilt Brush, and it was like, okay, this is fun, but it's not really meaty for me. It doesn't have any like literal thickness because it's splines. It's like I could also just do this in ZBrush, and so I kind of started playing around with that, and so that launches me forward to where my current practice is.
And to be, I mean, that said, I said we don't use the headset. I do use it for spatial design, for like blocking the different levels and things we do. There are uses for that, but it's very much secondary typically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a lot of like set design or blocking out, and then we'll refine and like ZBrush, and then bring that into Unreal, and then make adjustments. A lot more. Yeah, just like solidifying the architecture and flow of the space, because it really is nice being able to just zoom in and out in VR and be able to like, explore these spaces
and like walk around. Yeah, I mean, I've got a live show in sure. Right. I mean, walk around virtually. Shut up. We've got a show with it's not another. We got a 3-2-1 debut in this fall, but there's one prior to that with a different musician friend, and I'm gonna be, I think, doing the stage layout. For that, I'm just having them send me the 3D file so I can just expand it, be inside the space and like move the stage around and actually like see how it looks. So for that kind of stuff, it's incredibly useful.
Yeah, I know, I bet.
Otherwise, I don't know.
All right, let me try and apply it to a specific project, because we watched like not just like an hour before hopping on this call with you guys, the Danny Elfman music video that you guys did.
Oh sure.
Yeah. So I loved it. It's so good. I'd never seen it before until it was just like that, and I was like, oh, this is so great. This is amazing. I just want to know like the process of making that specific one. Talk me through it. Like even just like how you guys were approached and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so it started as so Danny, the start of his for this project was it was going to be this big, it was going to be the initial conception of this big crazy Coachella blowout that they just had this year, but it was going to be last year or the year before. Yeah, last year, and COVID was happening. Was it last year? No, year before. And COVID happened, and so Elfman was just like, I guess we're going to do an album. His creative director had been following us for a while and introduced him to our stuff. They liked it, and we had a mutual friend through Super Deluxe at Twitch, and we had been working on a lot of concepts to like do these bigger projects. And he had the concept that we could do some sort of live performance with Danny in 3D, because this is a peak pandemic, like there aren't any live events. Can we do this thing on Twitch? And that was going along well, and then I think the Twitch thing got killed by Bezos again, or somebody in Amazon, because as soon as Amazon starts paying attention to a company they own, they start firing everybody. So anyway, we moved on, and we got moved to a music video, and we had spent a bunch of time like conceptualizing what it was about or whatever. But he let us pick whatever track we wanted, and we heard Insects, which was like a classic Oingo Boingo track. For one, was one of the most fun ones out of the album. We really liked it. Also, it gave us a direct like thing to play with, like bugs. Yeah, and that seemed kind of fun. So the shoot was really interesting. Like the shoot was hard to pull off, obviously, because it was during the pandemic. But like we were very careful on all the testing and all that stuff. But Elfman was so I cannot speak highly enough of him. Like for one thing, we finished the shoot in like 3 hours early, which never happens. Like we wrapped 3 hours. He only needed to do we would do a few takes per shot, but like he only needed to do one, because we strapped it. He like took his shirt off. He's like ripped, and like he has tattoos and shit. I didn't realize it. He puts the mocap suit on, and he's just like ready to go. And we record all this stuff, and then we put him in VR, because I had the idea that we to actually get like to get some motivated motion capture from him, put him in some of these different scenes that he, as the like bug character, are we doing. So like he's got the headset on, like throwing stuff. Like Andy and I are like puppeting bugs around the room, and he's like grabbing stuff off the dresser and throwing it at him. There was one where he had to like knock a bunch of buildings down. There was I don't remember what the third one was.
Blasting insects in the set wall.
So, and use that just as like a way to motivate some motion stuff, and also just I always find it funny to put musicians in like weird scenarios where they're not having to imagine, they have something actually like act against, and it's like kind of funny, right? And it gives you some crazy shots, and it's just fun to not prank, but like kind of put them in a funny scenario that and then from there it was like a big, these are huge sets. Like it was hard by the end of the project, it was hard to even open. You click on the level, and it would take 10 minutes to load the level. I think it was the first time we did ray tracing was maybe Gaga, but
Gaga
this is the first time. I mean, this is the most bugs, like characters I think we've made per project. Andy made a ton of these insect characters. The most puppeting I've ever done. There were like 80 bugs in the entire. I puppeted 80 different bugs throughout the scene, and there were like multiple different levels that were streaming into each other. So it was like choreographing across this whole big expanse. Like I'm really proud of that video. I'm personally for the stuff I worked on most proud about the choreography, because like choreographing 10 bugs in one room when you're recording one or two at a time can be very tricky, and maintaining the motion and stuff. So it was this whole long process of recording each one by one, but keeping the flow of the whole scene, and like animating one bug to be like, okay, and then they're going to be surprised here, and then I have to animate the bug to and remember on beat to surprise that bug. You kind of have this flow of a
surprise the bug.
Yeah. I was wondering how that went.
Yeah.
If they're just being moved around bug like whatever, that's cool, but like it gets so much more if they're running into each other, if they're reacting to the flow of each other and things like that. So I start with the main with Elfman himself. That was a mix of puppeting and motion capture from him. And he's kind of reacting to specific things that I just pre-plan. Like, okay, there needs to be a moment here. He has to go around this way. It's kind of like planning. It's like planning a race. Like you go through this track this way and you go back around, whatever. And then you animate all the other supporting characters to support that. Like, okay, he needs to stop here and go back around so we get this cool like camera turn on beat or whatever. I need a bug thing to fly down and give him a reason to do that. So anyway, that was that process. Andy did all sorts of like technical build out and like fluid sims and character design and anyway.
Well, the Fluid Ninja stuff unfortunately didn't work because I think it was before when you could do render time. But we did a lot of effects work, and it was honestly like because we were able to afford more of our hardcore developer friends. So like it's funny like it, despite it being very heavy like levels to work with, it was also like the most optimized you could probably get that. Like all the bugs were like run like mobile like mobile phone ready. Because like we knew like there was gonna be a bunch of them. So just like it's also funny. It's like we were being very serious. It's still very, very laggy, but like
it was still very the scenes ran slow. That is by far the heaviest like density of stuff in any of our videos by far. Yeah,
we should be careful around that project.
It pays off so well. Like it's so dynamic, and like with the camera movements, it's amazing how the flow is so like the way it takes you through that video is just so great while also being so crazy. Yeah,
it took a lot of work.
Job. Yeah,
I appreciate that. It was very. We put the work in because Elfman is a legend, and we have some more stuff we might be doing with him in the future. He's very courteous. He keeps just randomly like commenting on our Instagram posts, just saying nice stuff.
That's so precious.
Yeah, like he's so fucking cool. Like
going off that earlier note, he's the kind of person who's like, okay, we're gonna go a little bit beyond scope here. We're gonna put a little magic in here because like it's like clearly worth it. He's like clearly a great person.
During production, like we were rushing up against this deadline. It was like we're getting there, but it wasn't quite there. And I was getting kind of stressed, and we didn't say anything, but he could tell through my emails to him that we were stressing, and he moved his entire release schedule off by 3 weeks just to accommodate us, which meant releasing the track later. It wasn't just delaying the video. He moved every other track release without even us asking. He was like, y'all seem like y'all are like, it's really intense right now. How about let's just move this down by a few weeks. Who does that?
I know, especially for a music release. Like,
crazy. I mean, it was through Epitaph, and Epitaph is great, but like he's Danny Elfman, so to a certain extent, he can do what he wants. But I was blown away. Like, I can't speak highly enough of him. And his creative director Barrett was just like facilitated the whole thing and brought all these new people in, like the remix album having Machine Girl and Little Snake and all these other people. I mean, it felt a little weird. It felt like the Donna Chromatica remix album in the case it was just like, this is all our friends. Like, what the fuck? But anyway, so can't speak highly enough about their team.
And whose idea was it to do like the Danny Elfman face, like Shark Boy and Lava Girl, George Lopez?
I think that was mine.
I think
that's so good.
That's pretty neutral.
We were
face?
The at least my initial approach to it was a projection, so it was just it was like a light. It was like a spotlight, which looked cool from very specific angles because it was like casting his face on the character and then behind him, so it was just huge, But Yeah, we had planned to write a face animated thing from the beginning.
We did have face tracking actually, to animate.
We did have face tracking, but we didn't end up using it. So we just used a video thing, which we've done in a couple other things that some like pilot development that will never see the light of day. But we're still playing around with that kind of vibe because it's very compelling.
Yeah.
And weird. Very weird.
I adored it, especially the more as the video goes along, it's just multiplied over buildings and stuff.
Well, again, incredible source material. Just as I started doing like some of the environmental accents and stuff, just putting his face texture on everything. The man can just sell
just
it.
Drag and drop his face.
Yeah.
Literally, that was to finish most of the scenes. It was just copy and pasting a video playing with his face on it like 1,000 times across the scene, and it was super fun.
Awesome. Well, I could go on, and then the leading question would be like, go more into like the technical stuff about the Lady Gaga one, but I feel like I want to like pivot more towards like the idea of you guys are getting all these bigger projects and all that. I just want to ask, like, are you guys happy, or do you guys feel like happier doing these things? Like, oh, now you're like, do views matter in this sense, or like does it even compare to like artist like practices or anything? Like, I'm not sure quite how to frame that, but
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, so the Gaga stuff, for example, was important for us because it was a fun process and it was very exciting, and it was fun to deal with stands and like that whole crazy
yeah.
But for me, that was important because we were reaching the end of our rope in terms of the pace of doing music videos specifically, and we had been doing this thing, and more we were getting, and still are, but we're getting people doing very similar things for other clients and getting undercut, and people who were taking inspiration from our stuff in a way that was fine, but like I felt like we were getting lost from the conversation a little bit. So views and mainstream cultural discourse and dialogue matter to the extent, to me at least, that you're
the next project.
Well, on a cynical, just like career thing, it
yeah.
brings in more stuff, and it expands your visibility and stuff like that. It gives you more access to stuff, whatever. Just on a conceptual, artistic level, I feel like if you can do something deeply internal and complex and interesting and substantial, and have it speak to people who are not coming from your social niche, then that's really the next level thing. That's what I think we aspire to, because like we can keep talking to the same like cool Berlin-y experimental queer art world for the rest of our lives, but like I kind of want to talk to other people too, and I don't want to dilute our work. So figuring out how to, this is also part of the TikTok conversation. How do you position within this broader cultural architecture of having to put work out on platforms? Even if you're doing music videos, it's still going on YouTube, so you're still working within platform capital, where each platform has its own specific built-in interest in promoting certain content, and probably your shit's not going to be part of that, because if it's more nuanced than just an ad. So trying to find a way to sneak in the art stuff is always important. So anyway, doing that stuff, getting the bigger visibility stuff is validating, but more it was like a flag in the ground, like, okay, we have something visible that people can see. We did this fucking thing. Now I don't have to keep worrying so much about getting our shit stolen and having somebody else credited for that, which only matters so much. But I don't know, doing virtual production years before Unreal ever like recognized as a thing, and then seeing a bunch of like Hollywood people get money when we didn't get any of that cash, like sucks. Yeah. And I wanted at least a bit of flag in the ground before we moved on, and we're in the move on phase. And I got, Andy, I'll let you speak for yourself. For me, this is a scary time. I'm not getting likes. I'm not getting views. I'm not getting that. I'm spending all my money on this thing, but I feel so much more at peace, so much more activated. Alex on our team, like whenever having conversations with our teammates, like working on our own projects, it is just like so much more engaging. Even the coolest music videos in the world do not engage us in the way that working on our own stuff does. So, I mean, I imagine it's the same for you, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, that's naturally good with anyone. Like, it's your own work, so it's your own child, effectively. It's like you want it to flesh out. And in that mode, it is very nice to be able to naturally let ideas flow through. It's definitely still a scary time with, like, in terms of going back to financing. Like, I'm like Sam's okay. Like, I'm pretty much like bottomed out and like just making it. which is like, distracting when you're still trying to like let things flow. Because some developments just take time. Like, and I'm in this space for the past 6 months. It's been nice being able to weave in between things, like getting more into live coding and getting back into like live performances with my own work, and like what does that mean for my own practice, and not wrapped by like these capitalist or consumerist measures, or like like not having to be a product. It can be something they can just kind of explore and let live. And so it is very much like, I don't know, you have that scary bit of just being like, when's the next check gonna come in from the like, like there's checks coming in, like there are like opportunities coming in, like so it's not like all doom and gloom. I don't know.
It's just a balance. It's constantly balancing act.
Yeah, balance.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. It definitely pushes you to sharpen your abilities for like mental health, and like making sure you're able to just focus on the right things and not get lost into some sort of weird projection of failure, like brought to you by capitalism or whatever, or just general anxiety. And yeah, just like being able to be present with your work and not be too distracted by these old mechanisms. But which is like, you can find solitude with like anyone can find solitude, like can find stability where like it's subjective, but like with me it's like, okay, there's actually still, things are being made, money's still coming in, like there's still safety nets, along with the work that we're doing here at Zero Space, among other places in New York. Like they are institutional building, which is going to be slow, but also feels like an incredibly
Stability.
Worthwhile long term. And it's also nice like having to help that stability, like having a community come to on a semi-daily basis, and like have that community here and be like, it's like, this is like we're kind of all working through these things.
Well, because we've basically been a freelancer studio up until like now. We've had physical studios, different places. We've like wherever, but like it's not been. This is the first. Like we have desks. We're working on our own projects. Yeah. Like we're building a hopefully like a actual institution and like a legacy and like putting down roots here. But up until this point, the last 6 years for Team Rolfes has been like anybody jumping from project to project, trying to kind of build some sort of context, trying to get them visible, and trying to have the next thing come in, and having artistic and life goals and things like that, and just doing your best. But never, so often we finish a big video and you wake up the next day or like 2 days later after you've hibernated because you were up, like I would like do like a 40-hour marathon or something like that, and then be like, okay, I've got 2 weeks to coast on this money, and then we have to have something come in. I have no idea what's coming in. I've not gotten an email yet. There's no project. And you just had to have confidence that was going to come in, or that you were going to be able to figure it out, or just start calling people and be like, hey, do you need to hire somebody for a second? And we got enough of a pace that like something consistently would always be coming in. But it's scary. And that's something I think we're trying to get away from. But that, again, we could only get away from after having built up this studio infrastructure of knowing how to do contract shit and starting to meet people in the industry who, I don't know, want to invest in us.
Mm-hmm. It also entires a lot. It what the fuck was I just trying to say? A lot of it is based off of what your style is, like what you're putting out there, like how closely your practice is already aligned to like other people's interests. Like my roommate recently was like laid off from his job, and so he's just like, all right, I'm gonna go back into just freelance, like doing my own thing, get back to my own artwork over time. And like his stuff has been a lot more like motion design, graphic design, that kind of stuff now, like 3D design as well. And like he's pretty much like booked out until December now, and then it's gonna like take a few months out, which is like great for him. Like honestly, like it's so like nice seeing that like he's being paid well on at rate. But it's like it is important to know like that his practice is a little bit more digestible for these different clients that he's having. And it's like they're more applicable to these different situations. So I think that's also like, it feels like it goes back to the anxiety of like, oh, is like my art like actually important? Like, yes, it is, but like there's also just like the capitalist fact of like,
is that an impression of me? Are you trying to do an impression?
I'm always trying to impress you. So but like no, it's just the fact that like his like groceries are paid for because or like his art practice is already closely aligned to something that people are familiar with. And that's just like recognizing that fact of like, okay, yeah, like we do experimental performative art that's channels into music videos and then like stage shows and a bunch of other shit. And it's like that's like it's like saying like, oh, I want to be a stand animator. It's like, look, God bless you, you're gonna have a rough time.
Yeah.
Your work is necessary, like it's to keep up like cultural conversations, but some sections are just going to have an easier time than others, and that's just how it is. And like you just have to have your piece with that, like knowing that's going to be like a rough time with that.
And well, the reason why I reached out to you guys is I think that you guys like underlying what you're all saying right now. It's like you're fighting for something that you deem is like very important and you're like very passionate about, and I respect that, and I see that within the work, and I see that while maybe you're making compromises in this fucking capitalist world, whatever, like I like the ways that you guys are jumping through these hoops. And so I'm like responding to that, and I'm like, I just want to put it under a microscope and be like, okay, how are you guys doing this? I guess I mean, what I'm trying to fight for right now, it's like I realize what makes me the most happy in this world, and it's like working with my creative friends and like trying to protect that at all costs while also having like creative freedom and all that. I think that's like my priority number one, and then everything else kind of follows that. Like if I can make, I guess I'm trying to say like I'm fighting for those things and I'm trying not to compromise for that. It's like, so yeah, thank you for those answers, really.
Sure.
And it's a constant. I mean, you're gonna being self-aware, like self-reflective for where you're at, where you find how do you value your own personal? What does your art practice look like? What is the essential core of that? What are the parts that are the most important? What are the parts can have a little bit more leeway? What is your interest culturally and community based and things like that? That's a constant self-diagnosis and renegotiation with yourself, and you might feel differently for one project versus and then another. These projects change you, so you do one, and you'll find like there's only so much you can do just writing it in a notebook and being like, okay, these are the important things. I'm going to stick to this. You can can and should do that and let that guide you, but you're going to find out trial by fire as it goes in the moment what actually matters. And like the fact that we do stage stuff generally sounds kind of crazy, like in a world where it's probably much easier just to put shit on YouTube. But for us, like our work kind of arises out of a real time thing. Like it feels more crazy and visceral to do live. Like it's part of this whole. Anyway, that's very specific to us. And so when I'm telling people generally about like art practice stuff, it's mostly just identifying where you personally are coming from. And trying to, like, we pick VR, we pick these tech. There's a million tech tools out there. There's a million new things. There's a new AI thing every fucking day. Yeah. And you can jump on that and like become conversant in it. But like when it comes to creating an art practice that isn't just about novelty and about making tech demos.
Yeah. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. Why? And like, why this tool? Why this, like,
your mission statement.
Kind of. Just like what's really speaking to beyond, what are you trying to say? And how does the tools... how are the tools speak to that on like a base level rather than just like, okay, VR's hyped up, I guess I got to do a VR thing. Like it should be for a reason. And then again, that's not an overnight thing. That's a process. And
the going off that, the reference I usually make is something that I just like, this offhand note that I learned during my watercolor practices was like Andrew Wyeth, like basically took his skills that he took from working at his dad or family business of sign painting and applied that to his paintings. And it's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And that also makes sense.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Egg tempura or like these other parts of it. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, okay, like there's still parts of your work that are valid, but that are like, but honestly, like that you can still incorporate. Like there's still a thing, and like Sam was just saying, like when your work is with like VR or like this other tech, there are still it's like there's an inspiration that you can get from there and be like, okay, this is what's working, this is what does not. So, like, let's cut out this conversation, focus on this, because like this is what actually we should be talking about or focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, I think for Andy and I both, especially my personal issue with 99.9% digital art out there is that they are completely detached. That the content, the thing being made is detached from the tools, because the tools are just de facto. They're doing it for just to show off this new thing. It has and I don't think that work, it goes off in the moment. Like it'll pop and do well online in the moment because it's some new thing people haven't seen before. But like you go back and look at that shit after like 6 months, nobody cares because it's not in the moment anymore. Like it's not, and I'll extrapolate that out to sketches. And like when I was like doing the kind of comedic satirical stuff, there's the push to do things that are very in the moment because that's what is going to do well online. But like so they just don't have that much staying power, I feel like. So anyway, big broad conversation, but yeah.
Do you think you guys are like achieving this timelessness in a sense?
I hope so. I think we're getting better and better at it.
But yeah,
it's hard to tell.
That's a hard. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of notes to hit there, and yeah, especially, I guess time will tell. Basically, I think I'd like to think that we are hitting it with because we're trying to go for motivations that are rooted in, like what's actually there, rather than trying to root motivations just being like, oh, it's shiny, or like this is like the latest trend. We're trying to keep things like focused on the narrative, and so I would hope that can be that it's us being aware of the tools and how to communicate things properly using the tools lends itself to being a little bit more timeless, and so people can still understand rather than just being like, it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that meme from like 20 years ago.
Exactly.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's the worst.
I think at least we can wrap up real soon here, but I think at least for me, in my perspective, I think timelessness is achieved mostly through authenticity, and when people can like respond to, like, they can see how genuine this like emotional moving pieces, I think that's when it has like very good staying power. So I guess I'm really focusing on being at least authentic to myself, and the hope is to be as accessible to people as possible without like confusing that with being mainstream or whatever. Right. I mean, Alex and I,
universality to specificity.
You can put like these short.
That's so hard.
Yeah. I'm thinking of ending things, but no.
Still hit though.
But like, there's like terminology we can use for this. It's like, okay, I'm gonna put like a little sugar to put this art thing down their throats, or Alex and I call it silly sophistication, where like, well, like, oh, we're applying comedy in this way, but then there's this underlying complex thing. Yeah, I think you guys kind of achieve that often, really. So,
thanks. It's hard. I mean, all this stuff, comes from, a lot of times when I'm doing like talks and stuff, I end up positioning it like kind of blowing off the prompt and being like talking directly to the like artists in the crowd, being like strategies for experimentalists, because like it's really hard. We're pushing against the tide with this. Like the tide is not pushing towards any sort of, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody, like things that are nuanced and have substance and that are not just like hashtag relatable, like bite-sized things, obviously are not prioritized out by the algorithm. That does not mean though that the opposite, which is like to be like, I don't know, I can say this because I was one, like noise boy, like underground, like fuck, like I don't even show my friends my music. I do it in my basement. I unplug.
I think that's cynical.
My speaker. It is. It's an escape. It's cope. And I challenge all experimentalists who are interested in all this, like, crazy stuff, which did end up having, a lot of that shit is not mainstream, but I don't think that frees us from the responsibility of spreading that. If it is really important, substantial, and not just for you to hear, which if it is, that's totally fine. If it's for other people, the challenge is for experimentalists like us to figure out those dynamics. And that ends up requiring understanding the dynamics of social media, understanding the dynamics of media and promotion. And you have to know the game to play it. Until we build this like dual power, leftist, anarchist, alternative platform or something like that. Like until there's an infrastructure to build something else, like we're all forced into this. So being aware of the shitty marketing shit to better understand where you can fit in artistically, is pretty necessary. Unless you just get super lucky, and we're super lucky, and even still we have to work at it. So
yeah. I appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, sure.
Can I bring out the big guns for the last question? Can I bring out the huge guns?
Lightning round.
I gotta ask you guys. What's this is a question I'm sure you've never been asked before in an interview ever, and probably will never be again. What's your favorite Family Guy character? And you have to do an impression.
Oh God, Sam, you
gotta pick. And there's no take back seats. Once you say it's cemented in stone, this is for the future. 100 years from now, people are gonna listen to this. They're gonna discover you guys. And they're gonna be like, I wonder what their favorite Family Guy character is. Oh, they say it in this podcast. I gotta listen. I gotta know.
I wish you had said like King of the Hill, because we're from Texas, so we can do like do a Hank Hill pretty well.
No easy outs. Seth MacFarlane demands it.
Yeah, an email.
Is this like? Was there a vendetta from somebody at RISD put out on our heads?
We were hired.
As Sam stalls for time, I'm gonna say the son. I forget what he sounds like. I'm pretty sure it's
son.
Just
the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
This
Brian
voting well for the impression.
I haven't watched Family Guy in like years, but like he was just like kind of like nasally. Well, I mean, it was Seth Green's like kind of nasally.
Oh, you mean Chris?
Chris, yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he was kind of Seth Green's like normal voice, and we're just kind of like, no, it's not. That's definitely not it. Jesus Christ, I can't
about it.
No, keep going.
You know, it's like
say his catchphrase.
His catchphrase.
Chris's old catchphrase.
All right, now this is his debate. Yeah, yeah.
Alex can do a Boston accent.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this sucks.
Yeah,
this is so hard.
They went flying.
Oh God.
I literally cannot remember what Chris sounds like, except for like Seth.
No, just
Seth Green.
I can picture in my mind. I just don't even want to attempt at all.
Yeah.
You're a brave soul.
Let's give it.
It's something like that. It's very
precisely.
Oh yeah. Wait, did he? Oh, Andy. Okay, he's back. I thought he like faked his wife cutting out.
I gotta go. Can't answer this fucking Family Guy question.
Hey, I gave my answer, and I gave my best attempt.
Yeah.
It's up to y'all to accept it.
A+.
Thank you.
Lois, I'm going to go down to the Krusty Krab and hang out with some Brown students. I don't know.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, that was a pretty solid piece.
We'll cast you.
There you go. Yeah.
I've never been so diminished. All right.
All right. I think we ended it on a high note.
Good.
That was rough. Any sort of southern thing we got down.
Yeah, we can do
it's
like
a northeastern.
I know. Can I do Boston? Yeah.
Yeah, we're from Florida, so it's kind of in there, but not really. All right.
God. I'm still reeling from that. It was an emotional experience.
I need to go think about my life right now. My life.
I really hope that I got like 5 years off your guys' life right there.
10. I gotta think about things about where I am.
I have like unfinished business now. It extended my life because I'm spending trying to do that impression better.
Yes, Sam will not stop. He'll be 100 years old.
We should have started with this. This is like Hot Ones, where now we're getting you uncomfortable, and now we can get the real fucking answers.
It's not a bad idea. Yeah. All right. Well, honestly, you've taken your pound of flesh.
Yes. Yes, I have, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. Thank you for the flesh.
Thank you guys for being here.